Hello, beautiful souls. All right, if you have not heard by now, Monique, the comedian, Monique's son, has come out s- speaking about her interview that she had on Shannon Sharp's podcast interview. You'll have to go back and listen to it. Um, just to see what she said. She briefly talked about her son, her children, but her son has come out with a response to that, and he has put it on TikTok. I will play the video for you, but I just want to let you know ahead of time that he speaks very low. So turn your volume up. But before I press play on that, I have several thoughts. This is very triggering to me listening to him just because I have grown up in an experienced emotional availability from my parents. So he hit a lot of emotional pain points, and I want to get your take on if anything sounded familiar with you growing up and how you experienced your mother if she was around. So it's not this segment is not about judging. It's just about looking and listening to what he said and trying to be objective about it. Um, I just want to ask you all a few questions. Have you ever felt, and this is related to your relationship with your mother, okay? And when I ask you the question, I really want you to think about it and how did these situations make you feel? So have you ever felt like your emotions were brushed aside or ignored by your mom and it made you feel invalidated or unheard? How has the lack of emotional support from your mother impacted your self esteem and your sense of self worth? Did you ever find it difficult to open up and form a deep emotional connection in relationships? And if yes, how do you think your relationship with your mother has influenced this? These all can be connected at times. Just really think about it. I thought about it and I can see, and I'm still working on it and seeing how certain parental relationships has affected my relationships as an adult, and I definitely can connect the dots. Let me go ahead and play this video. I hope you all can hear it. If you cannot, I will do a brief summary after. So hold on. All right, here we go. Okay.
I am Shalon. I am a stand up comedian, Monique's oldest son. Um, I guess I felt the need to make this video to just provide some context into this false narrative about her praying to the universe. I need to reconcile our relationship or whatever the hell it is. I wrote it all down so that way I don't go all over the place and get emotional or anything like that. I can, so I'm gonna talk like I'm reading a script, but it's just gonna help me kind of stay together. Um, but to address the Club Shay interview that she did, where she states that she prays to the universe in regards to reconciling our relationship, as I stated, is odd. Uh, my mother and I both know that that is a very false narrative, and I would like to free her of having to continue telling that lie. Faith without work is dead, and neither one of us cares to put forth any effort to reconcile with the other. We are separate, as she put it, because she doesn't care to be my mother any more than I care to be her son. Neither one of us has had the desire to reach out to the other in a very long time. And I don't think that either of us anticipates that feeling ever returning. Speaking with my mother directly, in my experience, will either lead to some odd newfound moment of clarity in regards to how she was as my mother, or she retreats back to daddy to move forward with a conversation. And I'm tired of hearing my mother's truths. Newsflash, I'm not sure if people know, but standing in your truth doesn't make you noble. I'm not sure if people are aware of that. But responding this way, I feel as though it allows me to say my piece uninterrupted. To those wondering, well, why say something now? Call it a form of therapy for me, I suppose. But when her daddy had intentionally stated that they have three sons, but his wife is on the internet talking about the fourth son in a video that has millions of views, that rubbed me the wrong way. But anyway, to inform a child that you are not interested in being a mother at a time when that kid is the only kid, that has the potential to lead a child to believe that you are not interested in them specifically. But to take it a step further, you also admit, my mother had also admitted to me that she didn't do the best job that she could do, um, which would also make one begin to question, all of your past decisions and prior emotional interactions. But to be completely honest and fair, um, those were things that I was willing to get over. Nobody's perfect, we're all human. But my mother showed a clear lack of humility, compassion, and consideration when taking any level of accountability for those things. My mother does a fantastic job of acknowledging a lot of things, but she doesn't take accountability very well. And anything that she may take true accountability for, it's only at her convenience, in my experience. But if I had to guess, though, her interest in being a mother probably started around the time that she married her daddy and had his children. But that interest, obviously seemed one-sided, and as it should have been. By that time, I'm in my late teens, so to some degree, the excuse me, the neglect becomes easier to hide or validate. I guess you could say there are now two baby boys in the house, that require attention. But still, during that time, however, I still watched her enjoy the love and admiration of total strangers more than my own. To this very day, my mother has never expressed to me when, if ever, she became interested in me as her son. That did lead me down a path of questioning my self worth and struggling to understand the value of a mother in a child's life. In the interview, she also states that she gave me an apology, but an apology to a son from a mother that consciously showed no interest in him holds no weight. There are still women to this day that my mother will give credit to for being more of a mother to me than she ever could. Her assistant, my cousin, being one of them. Um, every time, though, that my mother would state that she was right here whenever I was ready, that ideology still blows my mind today, that a person could openly admit to being an uninterested, not put my best foot forward type of parent and be so self-centered that they still express to the kid, you have to come to me when you're ready. You got to come to me for us to make this right. Okay. But I'm not sure what my mother could possibly think that she has shown me in the past or have for me now that's not money, goodness gracious, that would make me want to come to her, or whatever those feelings are supposed to be. Um, a mother is supposed to be the first woman that a boy falls in love with. I loved my mother very much, but my mother loved things more than she loved me, and she would validate her love for me by giving me things and would proceed to call me ungrateful or inconsiderate if said things did not have the desired effect. I couldn't imagine what it's like to be her, though, to ask God for what you want, and then he gives you what you need, though, only for you to ignore it and have the audacity to ask God for something else. And I'm glad I don't, I'm glad I didn't do that. Um, and when he told you no, you went to the universe instead. By no means, though, do I want to give off any type of an impression that I am a victim of anything. It's not the case. As you can see, I'm smiling from ear to ear. I'm alive. I'm happy. I'm a dad. I'm healthy, I think. I drink a lot of water. I'm getting over a cold now. I still have my days just like everybody else. And, there were a few things that she did teach me along the way. I did learn how not to love from my mother. I also learned to make sure that I never lose so much of who I am that I have to validate it through another person. And though I feel as though, you know, in hindsight, I think she did it reluctantly. I do appreciate my mother, for showing me what the top of the mountain looks like. You know what I'm saying? It did give me perspective on what hard work and dedication can get you, but I don't want something like that at the cost of giving up something that I created. I don't want it that bad. And speaking of creations, I genuinely, truly, I really did want my mother to have a relationship with my daughter. I even fought through those intrusive thoughts that were, if she wasn't interested in you, what makes you think she's going to be interested in your kid? Um, but it took my mother no time at all to prove that those intrusive thoughts were correct. But what I can say, good for her, the universe did, bless her with three other sons, and God willing, I'm sure that one of them, all three of them are adults now. So I'm sure that one of them, God willing, if not all three of them, will make her the grandmother that she wants to be. Um, I still look forward, to that moment for her. But overall, when it comes to the boys, though, I am happy that whenever they do hear me talk, sorry, my phone did something weird, but no, but whenever they hear me talk, um, they don't know what it is. They can't relate to what it is that I'm saying. My experience with my mother is not their experience with our mother. So my prayer for her and them is that they continue to see her the way that they see her now. I do also want to make sure that I say thank you to my mother for giving me life. Without that moment in time, I wouldn't have had my little one. But outside of that moment, there isn't anything that either of us has to offer the other. In my opinion, it's a waste of God's time and the universe's time for praying for something that you are not willing to put forth any effort to obtain. Putting the work into becoming Monique is more important to my mother than being my mother. And I do not believe that it was never about her being there and waiting for me, but it was supposed to be about me being there and waiting for her. Um, my mother's value had reached such a low point in my life that I no longer found it necessary to either want to wait for her or even go to her. But like I said, man, I'm super grateful that she has the opportunity to do it all over again. I'm happy for her. I hope the Cat Williams tour goes well, but the narrative that she prays for us to reconcile is a false narrative. It's not real, and I'd appreciate it if she stopped saying stuff like that. Hi.
All right, there you have it. I recognize some of these sayings and that he had mentioned, and I encourage you all to drop in the chat on what are your thoughts of his narrative. So we don't want to bash either side of their stories because it is their narrative. Um, but his does sound familiar to me. Um, some takeaway points that I got from it is that Mo is not interested in being a mother and a lot more interested in being the comedian Monique and being famous rather than being his mom, and that she didn't put the focus on parenthood. He said, I think he said too that she apologized for not, yeah, he did say that she apologized for not being there and that they're still separated, and that both are not, seem to not be interested in reconciling, and there's just no desire for contact. He also said that standing in your truth doesn't make you noble. That was a word right there. Sometimes I feel people use good buzzwords, and just because you're being truthful and standing in it Doesn't make it right either. Doesn't make the actions right. Um, he also said, and I love this part, that some had questioned about him making this post, and he said that he did it was almost as if it was a form of his therapy. I saw it as him using his words. I don't know how exactly he grew up, the day-to-days, but it sounded like his voice was taken from him. And so for him to make this post on social media, you think about it, this post will never go away. He obviously was fully aware of that, and he still used his words to speak his truth and give his narrative on how he has felt. That takes a lot. That is huge. Um I also got from it that he wasn't being malicious, but more of using his words. Um he also questioned his self-worth. He learned how not to love. He also said that Mo validated love with material items. And he said that losing yourself enough to, you have to use other people to validate yourself through another person. Woo, so I want to get into the meat and potatoes of this. I also heard that she did not take accountability. And I tend to believe that, just listening to her for years, not saying the things that she has said have been totally wrong, but she does give a narrative of not taking accountability for some of the things and actions that she has said. So this next section of the segment of this post, excuse me, of my episode, it's not pinpointed at Monique. I'm now speaking about parents as a whole. Okay. So this can be including your parents as well. Or, hey, let's keep it real. It could be yourself for people who are parents. So this is about parents who do not take accountability with their children, and more importantly, on the effects that it has on the children. And sometimes people say, and I've been this person too, that kids are resilient. Kids are resilient, but kids also have feelings. And some of the feelings can surface in adults. And it can look like this. It can look like this brother right here. It can look about doubting your self-worth and looking for validation in others. It can turn out being aggressive. It can be quiet and silent. But parents' words are very strong. They have a lasting effect on children. So we're going to get into a couple of points on how it can look. But I want to ask you all this question, whether this was your parent or if this is you as a parent. If you think, oh, no, my kids are good, we have great communication skills, ask yourself this. If your child comes to you with the issue that they have about you, and I'm not talking about them popping off at the mouth and being disrespectful. I'm just talking about they are just stating what their narrative is. Can you listen to your child without interrupting them, without cutting them off, without pushback from them? And how that pushback, if they say something or when they say their facts, their narrative, and you tell them it didn't happen that way, or you tell them that they're being disrespectful. You know what? Let's talk about that. Especially in our community, the Black community, we look at anything. If a child states how they feel, we look at it as being disrespectful. Meanwhile, we disrespect our children and we look at it as, well, I'm being the parent. But respect goes both ways, right? Just because you're in a age bracket does not mean that respect is not given. or shown. So, can you listen to your child without lying about the narrative or manipulating, yelling at them, cussing, walking off, ignoring? And we're going to get real about it now, raging out, or even to the point of bullying them. Let's keep it real. Some parents are children's first bullies. I'm going to say that again. Some parents are children's first bullies. Mm. All right, so this is how it can look. If you have a mother wound and how it can look, um, it's the lack of emotional validation. So sometimes you can grow up with an emotionally unavailable mother, and it can leave a son feeling like their emotions are insignificant or unworthy of acknowledgement. They can express their feelings only to be met with indifference or dismissal. That's that ignoring, the the bullying, the dismissal, the manipulation, and it can lead to a persistent sense of not being understood or valued for who they truly are. Listening to this brother speak, it really made me sad because can you imagine your mother? And he said it, oh, your mom is usually the first person the son falls in love with. And they're just indifferent towards you. Mm, insignificant. So that can also go to the low self esteem and that the absence of emotional support and validation from a mother can deeply impact a son's self image and confidence, and constantly seeking external approval to fill the void left by maternal validation. They may develop a pervasive belief that they are unworthy or flawed and struggle to find value in themselves outside of external validation. I'm going to share this story. I was listening to this podcast, and this brother was talking about how he was a serial cheater. He said he cheated on girlfriends. He said he cheated. I think he said he was married twice. He said he cheated on both wives. He cheated on one wife, I think within 24 hours of him getting married. Excuse me, I take that back. Within a week, what am I talking about? Within a week of getting married, he went back to his girlfriend and cheated on his wife. He said he grew up watching men cheat on wives and thought it was normal. And that was his excuse for cheating. He had emotional affairs, physical affairs. Um, it didn't matter. And his wife left him. He said he felt broken. He said he ended up going to, I think he ended up going to therapy, and he shared with his therapist once they got deep and peeled back layers, he realized that using, oh, well, I grew up as watching men cheat on their spouses as being normal, but in the reality, he found out about himself that he had such a low sense of self-worth, and he started unpacking the baggage that he had with his mother. His mother was extremely dismissive. She was emotionally unavailable. And all he said he was doing was he was looking for. So when I say external validation, it is looking for people to validate you outside of your own self. He didn't have that. He had that void, and he was constantly filling that void with women. And not only did it was it women, he would have a wife and a girlfriend, but then he'd have three other 4 other girlfriends on top of that, but realized that he was trying to fill a bucket that had a hole in it, and he was just filling it with women with a bunch of sex. He was a good looking man. I mean, I thought he was fine. He looked good, and he used that to his advantage. And he said that he felt a rush every time a woman told him yes. And that yes looked in the form of acknowledging his good looks, because he was good looking. That yes looked like a form in the form of going out on dates with him. Despite knowing that he was married, that gave him the extra rush, because he said he didn't mind lying about it, but it gave him an extra rush when he did tell them that he was married. And it also, of course, gave him a rush when they said yes to the sex. But he realized that all those yeses is because his mother said no. That blew my lid off when he said that. And his mom's no came in a literal sense of saying no, but her no also came in the sense of silence, meaning she was just physically there, just a shell of a person, but there was no emotional attachment. And he could not understand that how could a mother be so detached from their son? So he looked for that validation in women. And that's why he was a serial cheater. So now it made me wonder about some people that I've dated. Like, what's going on with that? But that's another story. Let me stay on track. So, also, having a mother wound as a son, you can have difficulty forming intimate relationships. That goes back to what I just talked about with this brother, this serial cheater. Sons of emotionally unavailable mothers may struggle to form intimate connections in adulthood. Without a healthy model of emotional intimacy from their mother, they can find it challenging to navigate the complexities of emotional vulnerability and trusting in relationships. This can also lead to difficulties in forming and maintaining deep, meaningful connections. And more I think about it, I should have started this live sharing this story about this brother, because more of these points that I'm bringing up, this is a perfect example of how it can look. So it also can spark the fear, trigger a fear of abandonment, in that emotional unavailable moms can instill a profound, a deep fear of abandonment in her son. They can grow up feeling emotionally neglected. And some sons, they can develop a deep seated fear of being left or rejected by those they care about, leading to clinginess, insecurities, and an inability to trust others' intentions or commitment. On my Patreon, I can go into how I've experienced that in when I was growing up with a parent, and how their fear of abandonment, I didn't realize it then, but I can clearly, let me tell you, when I say clearly see it now, is as if the shroud has been removed from my eyes. So this shit is real. It really is. Check out my Patreon for that. Um, Suppressing emotions with an unavailable mom as a son, it can lead to a place where you express emotions and it's met with disapproval. Sons may learn to suppress their feelings as a means of self preservation. They can be afraid of being judged or rejected for showing vulnerability, and they may bury their emotions deep within themselves, leading to a sense of emotional numbness or disconnection from their own feelings. Women, I'm talking to you, including myself. I've said this before. Sometimes we create this in our sons. Tell me if you said it or if you heard, if a little boy falls and scrapes his knee and he's crying and you tell him to be quiet. Big boys don't cry. or you tell them, "What are you crying about? I'll give you a reason to cry." Telling them to shut up, be quiet. You're the man of the house. Don't we're training them to become these emotionalist beings. And we wonder why when we're women now as adults looking for a partner, and when we have our partner and our partner is emotionally blunted, they're just there, but there's no intimacy. And I'm not speaking about sexual intimacy, I'm speaking about emotional intimacy. It's a disconnect. We wonder why they don't speak to us. We wonder why when they do speak to us, there's no depth whatsoever. It's not loving and kind. It's just there. It's like you're familiar strangers. Ooh. Talk to me in the chat and let me know if that sounds familiar. All right. Does this ever sound familiar when you rely on your own self for emotional support, meaning the self-reliance, meaning it almost becomes a coping mechanism where you do not ask people for help. There's that hyper independence. Mm. And that can also lead to feelings of isolation and loneliness, anger and resentment. So, growing up feeling neglected or emotionally abandoned by their mother can bring up feelings of anger and resentment within their sons. They may harbor deep seated resentment towards their mother for failing to fulfill their emotional needs, leading to unresolved feelings of hurt, betrayal, and bitterness that can impact their relationships and overall well being. You ever met someone who does not like women? And when I mean that can even look like some of these red pill brothers, huh? Now that I think about it, it makes you wonder what was that core value that they thought of it came up with as a child. Like, did their moms fail them emotionally? They just do not like everything is the woman's fault. I know someone right now is extremely disrespectful to women. He's a whole grown ass man. He is so disrespectful. Women are just beneath him. And he also ended up sharing that he witnessed his mom do a few unsavory things in front of him, some things that a child should have never witnessed. And he takes it out, and I've seen him, he takes it out on women that he's dated. And mm, that's a lot right there. Excuse me, and he's putting them through hell. I've seen it. So this goes back to another point of sons with a mother wound, how they can seek validation and approval through their achievements and accomplishments. Sounds like these overachievers. And I'm not speaking about everyone. Okay, let's put that out there. I'm not generalizing, but this can happen. So it can look whether if it's an academic success, career advancement, or even personal accomplishments. They may feel compelled to constantly prove their worthiness in the absence of their maternal validation. So they seek validation and recognition from others as a substitute. They can have difficulty setting boundaries. Some sons raised by emotionally unavailable mothers may struggle with setting and maintaining healthy boundaries within relationships because they don't have a clear understanding of what can look like a healthy boundary, and they may struggle to assert their own needs and preferences, and this can lead to a mutually respectful and fulfilling relationships. Some may not have boundaries because they never witnessed it growing up. Okay. Overall, this can impact the mental health. Okay. And it can take a toll on a son's mental health. They can feel anxiety, depression, low self worth. And as a result, it can have some unresolved emotional wounds. So uh, it's good to address these wounds. And if you can witness, if you are cut and the wound is leaking blood, right? Are you going to put a band-aid on it, or are you going to go to a doctor and get stitches? Sometimes when we do not address that wound, we can bleed on others, meaning we can bleed our emotional wounds on others as opposed to looking from within. So, therapy would be a great option just to see. Go, sometimes you have to go deep. It doesn't feel good at times, but sometimes going deep can stop that bleeding. I'm going to end on asking you a few questions. Um, have you noticed, has your mental health been impacted from a relationship with your mom? Have you ever felt any anger or resentment towards your mom for not being emotionally available? And how do you think these unresolved feelings have affected your current relationships or even your past relationships or even relationships? Hey, maybe even if you have any with your children. All right, I spoke enough. I want you all to just think about some of the topics that we spoke about, and I will do an update if needed about Mo's son. Let's see if she responds to what he has to say. I will talk to you all later. Bye.